The British Navy fired nearly 3,000 shells at the German battleship Bismarck, and it still would not sink. In the end, the crew had to sink it themselves. Today, it is sitting 3 miles down at the bottom of the North Atlantic. Nobody is allowed to touch it. Most people know the Bismarck sank. What I want to know is where it ended up, what state it is in, and why nobody has ever gone back for it. The answers are genuinely strange. Some of them I went back and checked 3 times before I was sure. The Bismarck was Germany's most powerful battleship. When it was commissioned in August 1940, it was one of the largest warships ever built by a European nation. It was 823 feet long. It displaced over 50,000 tons fully loaded. It carried 8 15-inch guns in 4 twin turrets. Around 2,200 men of the Kriegsmarine served aboard. Nazi Germany called it unsinkable. That word would come back to haunt them. Its entire active career lasted 8 days. In May 1941, the Bismarck left the Baltic on its first and only offensive mission. The operation was codenamed Rheinübung. The plan was to break out into the North Atlantic alongside the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen and attack Allied convoys carrying supplies from America to Britain. On May 24th, it ran into 2 British warships in the Denmark Strait between Greenland and Iceland. The battleship HMS Prince of Wales and the pride of the Royal Navy, the battlecruiser HMS Hood. Within 8 minutes, the Bismarck's guns found their mark. A shell tore through Hood's deck and detonated her ammunition magazine. The explosion snapped the Hood in 2. She sank in under 3 minutes. Of her crew of 1,421 men, 3 survived. The order went out immediately across the Royal Navy: sink the Bismarck at any cost. The British committed every available ship to the hunt. But the Bismarck had taken damage in that exchange. A hit to one of her fuel tanks had cost her 1,000 tons of fuel oil and left a visible slick trailing behind her. Her captain turned for the French port of Brest for repairs. For a day and a half, the British actually lost her. The Bismarck slipped into the darkness while her pursuers searched in the wrong direction. Then, on May 26th, Admiral Lutyens, apparently not realizing he had lost the British, broke radio silence to send a long message back to Germany. The British intercepted it. They were back on the trail. Torpedo bombers from HMS Ark Royal attacked that evening. Most torpedoes missed, but one hit the stern and jammed the rudders hard to port. The Bismarck could no longer steer. She began sailing in circles in the North Atlantic, unable to reach France, unable to maneuver. Her crew spent the night trying to fix the damage. They could not. The following morning, May 27th, 2 British battleships, King George V and Rodney, along with 2 heavy cruisers, closed in. What followed was not really a battle. It was an execution. The British fired over 2,800 shells. They scored more than 400 hits. The Bismarck's guns fell silent one by one. Her superstructure was destroyed. Casualties were catastrophic. This is the bit that got me. After nearly 2 hours of bombardment at point-blank range, the British ships could not sink her. The Bismarck's armored hull simply refused to go down from gunfire alone. In the end, it was the Bismarck's own crew who finished the job. With the ship clearly lost and hundreds of men still alive below decks, the order was given to scuttle. The crew opened the sea valves and set explosive charges. The Bismarck went under at 10:39 in the morning, stern first, colors still flying. Of her crew of 2,200 men, only 114 survived. Robert Ballard, the same oceanographer who found the Titanic, located the Bismarck wreck in June 1989, 48 years after she sank. What he found was not what anyone expected. The Bismarck is sitting upright on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, roughly 600 miles west of Brest, France, at a depth of about 15,700 feet. That is nearly 3 miles down. Despite being hit by over 400 shells, despite being torpedoed multiple times, and despite sinking 3 miles through the ocean, the hull is largely intact. The teak wood decking is still there in places. The paint is still visible. The anti-aircraft guns are still in their mountings. Ballard said simply, "Bismarck did not implode." That tells you something important about how she sank. When a ship goes down with air still trapped inside, the water pressure at depth crushes the hull inward. Ballard found none of that. The compartments were already flooded when she went under. That is consistent with the scuttling. The crew had already opened the sea valves before she sank. So, why has nobody salvaged the Bismarck? The depth alone answers most of the question. 15,700 feet is beyond the reach of any conventional salvage operation. The deepest successful large-scale salvage in history happened at a tiny fraction of that depth. Getting to the Bismarck required